Hi, welcome to Crisco's Corner. Proud to live in the greatest country in the world. Unfiltered opinions, no PC discussion here. Agree, disagree, hate it, love it, it's all good. Sit back and enjoy some unfiltered commentary. We discuss politics, culture, interviews, and more. Your comments are always welcome. Please help the channel by hitting that subscribe button. Doesn't cost a thing. And as always, thanks for your support. Hi guys, welcome back to Crisco's Corner. I gave this a lot of thought. What's been going on the last 4 years or so, especially the last since we'll say January with the start of COVID and with the election season coming up, and then the fiasco that was the presidential election and other elections, i.e. Congress and the Senate. And I don't consider myself an expert on American history, but I know a little bit, maybe a little more than most, but a lot less than some. And I find it extremely interesting. People, of course, think that people that lived in times without technology or didn't have the things we have today aren't mentally acute, and they're basically stupid. And, of course, we're much smarter, and we can solve our problems much better, which, of course, is false. People 2,000 years ago are just as intelligent and capable as people today. I'm showing this quote from John Quincy Adams because I fear we're at a crossroad, just like they were at the time in 1840s. They've been trying to avoid civil war. The slavery issue was always in the forefront. Abolitionists were pushing hard. And I would have been an abolitionist in his time, of course, because slavery is evil. But the ship, the Amistad, it was a Spanish ship. They illegally took Africans from the African continent. Slave trade was outlawed by all the countries, the vast majority of countries in the world. And they could not take Africans anymore from the continent of Africa and sell them in the New World, in the Western Hemisphere. It was against all the laws. So they did was they illegally grabbed several, I think it was like 30 or 40. There was a mutiny. The Africans killed several of the crew, and they let 2 Spanish sailors live and told them to go back to Africa, and they tricked them, of course, and ended up on the shores of Long Island. And there, it's a huge mess. All kinds of court cases. The 2 Spanish guys that they let live wanted the cargo, and of course, being the slaves as property, they wanted the money for them, and it was a huge international incident, and it was just a lot of nonsense. And of course, Martin Van Buren, the president at the time, basically did nothing to stop what was going on, and so it proceeded in court. They were brought before the court. Charged with murder for killing the crew. The court ruled they didn't have the jurisdiction. Went to federal court, where they ruled that they proved that they were not from Cuba, as originally stated, but they're from the continent of Africa, therefore free men. And, of course, that was appealed. Went to the next court. Does this sound familiar? Went to the next court. And finally, it ends up after appeal, 2 or 3 years later in the Supreme Court. And John Quincy Adams, former president in his 70s now, agrees to help 2 other lawyers out. And it's a famous movie about it. Now, the fear at the time was if the Supreme Court rules in the Africans' favor, they were Mende people, I believe. If the court rules in their favor, it's going to start a chain reaction, and a civil war will start, basically North and South, which happened less than 20 years later. So at the end, now this is from the movie. I tried to look up the quote the best I could. It's probably paraphrased. Those guys spoke 2, 3, 4 hours. They were very long-winded. But I wanted to bring this up at the introduction of the video series I'm putting together, The Future of Our Republic, and what I think is probably the biggest crisis we faced, I would say, since the Civil War. I would say this is an even bigger crisis than the Great Depression in the end, and its effect, with the political parties completely polarized, with COVID-19 destroying lives, not just by death of the disease itself, by the draconian lockdowns, people's lives just ruined and shattered, grieving loved ones that have died from the disease, plus the fact that your life is ruined forever. Your business is gone. Your job is gone. You can't pay for your apartment. You can't pay for your house. It's unbelievable misery on the country. And then the fiasco of the election. And I'm going to go through several parts. I'm going to go through how they labeled Trump as evil. Another episode, the false Russian collusion, the incredibly historic media bias against the president, the impeachment farce, the raging economy that we had that was cut short, the false accusations of racism is going to be one episode. The Kavanaugh hearings are going to be another. The incredible social media bias is going to be another. Voter irregularities and fraud is going to be another. And the media coverage about COVID will be one. And then finally at the end, the last episode, my conclusions, what I think, what might happen. Anyway, I wanted to show this at the very beginning because that was the same fear then, that a court decision would cause a civil war. It would tear the country to pieces. So, see, folks, we always haven't been this stable. We've had many crises come up over 240 plus years. And I use this as a perfect example. Now, this is from the movie. I couldn't confirm the quote, but it's basically a paraphrasing what he thought and the fear was at the time. And John Quincy Adams basically said to the court, if the Amistad Africans are found not guilty, many fear will start a civil war. And if it does, then let it come. And let it finally be the last battle of the American Revolution. It was in 1841. Less than 20 years later, the real Civil War started. Of course, there were compromises made along the way. There are so many similarities up to the American Civil War, up to the period now. And when I think a civil war might start in the United States, I don't think it's going to be armies in the field like it was in 1860 to 1865. And the election of Lincoln, which set off a chain reaction that nobody could stop. Even many, including Jefferson Davis, I might add, was in tears when he resigned from the Senate. He did not believe that secession was the way to go. But the car was rolling down the hill and nobody could stop it. And it ended up where it ended up. We all know about that and the misery and the 600,000 plus American lives lost. I think a civil war today would not be armies in the field at all. It's going to be fought in small municipalities and counties, in regions, even states that are going to pick a side. Because I learned a long time ago when I used to be a city councilman here in upstate New York, the fact of the matter is this. People don't like picking sides because they're going to make the other half of the people they know mad, angry. But the reality of it is, if you don't pick a side, someone will pick a side for you. And it's usually not the side that you would have picked. So I'll say this quote again, and then we'll go on to the next, I'll call it episode. And the quote is, again, if the Amistad Africans are found not guilty, many fear will start a civil war. And if it does, then let it come. Let it finally be the last battle of the American Revolution. If a court decision, a U.S. Supreme Court decision goes a certain way, there's going to be a lot of angry people. And I think for the next two, at least, if not 4 years, there's going to be a lot of lines drawn in the sand, rigid lines. And I include myself in that group, one side against another. And we're going to have to choose which side we're on. And we're going to have to do our best to make sure that America stays free, that our First, Second Amendment rights especially are upheld, and all the other amendments as well. Because I'll tell you the truth, folks, the Constitution may be in the biggest danger it's ever been in since the Civil War. I know that for certain. America is the only great republic left in the world. As the gentleman from Venezuela spoke at the RNC convention, of course they did it virtually because of COVID, he told about what it was like in Venezuela and how he escaped. And he got choked up and teary-eyed and said, if America falls, there'll be nowhere else to go. We are the last vestige of ultimate freedom in the world, including all of Europe. We have rights that no one else in the world has. And those rights now are being threatened, probably more than ever. This election in January is going to, and Georgia is going to, point us in what direction we're going in. And there's going to be resistance on both sides, heavy resistance. And I agree with John Quincy, even though I'm not a huge fan of his, he's right on this. And if it starts a civil war, then let it come. And then maybe it'll finally be the last battle of the American Revolution. And until the next episode, folks, goodbye and good luck.